Hey everyone, welcome back to the Metamodern Meaning podcast, where we explore the meaning of metamodernity and meaning in metamodernity. Today I'm joined by Oliver Griebel. Oliver is the editor of this impressive book, which we'll be discussing in just a moment. He holds a master's in philosophy from Munich University and a frequent contributor and sort of online space curator in the integrative and metamodern network scene. And yes, today is an opportunity to explore this incredible product of theological exploratory possibilities into the mystical, the metaphysical, and non-dual theology. So anyway, before we get into all that, thanks, Oliver, so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this is well, this podcast is a little bit of a long time coming because you published this, I think, about a year ago or so,
Mhm.
and we've been talking about trying to have a conversation about this for some time, and I finally had a chance to get my hands on a copy of this, and just briefly we'll mention some of the familiar names that people in this space will recognize. Well, for one thing, it's got a little blurb on the back from Hansi Franacht. It's edited by yourself, forward by Andrew M. Davis. It features work from folks like Layman Pascal and Stephen McIntosh and a host of other thinkers in this really interesting kind of theological space. So, why don't you set up this book, this anthology? What is the nature of this? Explain the title a little bit and kind of what you were hoping to accomplish with putting this out into the world.
Okay. Um, there's two elements to it. Firstly, it's the duality or complementarity of the one and the many. Let's put that first. Um, the key idea is that the cosmos is both one and many. I don't. I have to pay attention not to say too much in order to distinguish between my own, cosmic holism
Mm.
and the contributions of the others. So I will try to make it as broad as possible. But I think that the common conviction of the authors, of the co-authors, was that you can't reduce either the unity of the cosmos to its many parts, nor can you reduce the plurality or multitude of entities to the whole, to the wholeness, to the one. And so you have, which is kind of a surprising idea, maybe. You have a kind of a polarity and complementarity between the one and the many, which is duality and polarity and complementarity, which is absolutely, um, you know, uh, un, uh, it's absolute. It's not. Normally, you would think of a polarity as being balanced, with North Pole and South Pole, which are pretty much like minus and plus. But here you have the all encompassing, which is one pole, and the multitude of entities it contains is the other pole. So this is really something quite unexpected, and I think it's also quite novel because the history of philosophy consists in mostly in reduction. It's kind of a bizarre complementarity between the wholeness and its parts. And that's the idea of non-reductionism too, Normally, almost every philosophy I know is a reduction to a monism, to a dualism, or to a pluralism. And here, this idea of the both one and many, one and many, is the idea of a unity and duality and plurality all at once.
Well,
That's
yeah, so let's break this down a little bit because
yes.
people might be going, "What?"
Okay.
So one in many. All right. So there's unity and there's plurality. I
hmm
think I think intuitively people would have a sense of like, yeah, I get the idea of the many, right? I look out, I
Yes.
see many, many different things. So maybe explain a little bit like what is the one that might be compared to or against in
Okay.
that sense?
Um, okay. Once again, I have to distinguish between my own ideas and the broad idea of the book.
Hmm.
So for me, the one that would be what I would call the cosmos. And the cosmos, it's not an outer space like a container containing things that have nothing to do with one another, but it's an orderly and an order of things. And anything that exists inside this cosmos is not independent from it, but it's always not a independent entity, but it's always an entity inside this framework.
Mm.
This cosmic all over framework. So this can be a planet, this can be a person, it also can be a biosphere, it can be anything. It also can be an idea, or it can be an experience of a being. And this approach doesn't take entities in the cosmos in isolation, but they always exist in interplay. In the one. And the one is not. It's. I'm writing now. I'm writing the next book, and it's crucial to distinguish this idea of the cosmos from um, theistic ideas, for example. In theism, the one God is always beyond the world, and here in cosmicalism, it's identical. The cosmos is not there's no extra God needed, but the cosmos is a all over coherence, and this coherence also has a meaning, has the beauty of being this roundness and wholeness, and everything in it participates in this.
Well, so
Okay,
so yeah, so
but that's
one,
that's that's my view, and if I
yeah.
try to make it broader for the other contributors, it would be any attempt to make an approach that doesn't um, that that doesn't reduce the many to the one or the one to the many. For example, Layman Pascal, I think he would not be prepared to attribute as much self-awareness, and to the one as I would. For me, the cosmos is not only all encompassing and cohering everything, but it's also has to be aware of itself,
Hmm.
being this wholeness. That's
Yeah. Well, let's
so
stick.
there's mhm,
Yeah, let's stick to the scale just for the time being of sort of the whole anthology of kind of a way into
yes,
this, in which
yes,
your work is a part, but and also as
hmm
an editor, but it's a lot of kind of views on this. So, I mean,
hmm
one question for me that comes up is like, I feel like if you were to even talk to a physicist or a cosmologist, and you can say, well, on the one hand, the Earth can be considered as one unit. On the other
hmm
hand, there's lots of things in there. Or Brendan as a body, as a human, as a person,
hmm
is one person, but obviously I'm made up of parts, and
hmm
there's a manyness to me. So on the one hand, I feel like that doesn't seem like a particularly radical idea, but I think that
hmm
there's something much deeper going on maybe than that, I assume. So could you unpack a
yes.
little bit of the difference of like, or maybe the best way of asking this question uh, is it that you are really exploring oneness and manyness at a kind of metaphysical level of analysis that you're trying to compare in some profound way? That's some kind of synthesis that's being found here. So yeah, unpack that a little bit more.
Yes. Okay. So the idea of the cosmos is the idea of by contrast to a person, for example, which is a wholeness. But a person is also part in a bigger context. The biosphere, the planet, the nation, the society of nations and humankind. But the cosmos, the all-encompassing, or the one with the big O, is sort of the limit and the frame of anything, you know. And so uh, that's the idea. The and the any and everyone who has contributed to this book puts it in a slightly different way. Philip Clayton, who is a theologian, I think he would not say that that God is the cosmos, because in his panentheism, um, the ultimate reality and God is encompassing the world and containing the world, but there's a sharper difference, between the world and God, who is somehow beyond any concrete universe or outer space with planets in it or something. And in my approach, in my own approach, there is not really a difference, anymore. There's the cosmos, and there's no extra God needed, because the cosmos being the coherence, doesn't need an extra, spirit outside of it, but it is spirit. Spirit is a feature of this wholeness, in itself. Which is then which we all participate in. But again, I'm in my own approach, but everything, and the general idea is broadly speaking, that you don't, for example, Philip Clayton, he says that it is crucial to give the finite beings, persons on Earth, a genuine role in history. The history of the universe can't be planned beforehand, by the divine, and then just be played like a theater play, and that's the irreducible role of persons in this world. So there is no in Philip Clayton, there's no reduction either. But it's a different approach, and Lemon Pascal's as well, or all the other contributors. But we can speak in detail about these a little bit later, But this is the gist, of the one of the many one. It's called many one with a hyphen, That's in order to say that the cosmos is many and one, and it's the entanglement between this wholeness and its participants.
Well, and also one clarifying point,
Yes.
the one in this mix is not, it doesn't sound related in any way to, say, notions of the Platonic one or the
No.
Neoplatonic one. It's just notions of unitariness versus
Yes.
plurality.
The one in Neoplatonism is different, because I think the one in the what is most important for the one in Neoplatonism is that it withdraws, to any real grasping it, understanding it. It's totally transcendent. And the one in the many one thinking, it's it's everywhere. It's not. For example, I would always presuppose that human beings cannot be fooled by their intelligence, because this intelligence comes from the one, and they will, depending on their evolutionary maturity, they will always grasp aspects of the one. And the more they evolve, in the course of history, the more one-sidednesses they will begin to eschew, to avoid. They will learn to avoid, and they will learn to mostly avoid the one-sidednesses. The reductionisms, the extremisms, because the many one has all the dichotomies as part of it, and that's the idea of both and, in the title. Both and means they are for the really crucial dichotomies in worldview language, or in our philosophy and worldview thinking. It's never either or, but always both and. Both and more.
Yeah.
If you ask Is the cosmos matter or is it spirit? The answer is both, and more, and this more would be the intricate interplay between these both. Yes, and this can be is not only true for the one and the many, but also for dichotomies like matter and spirit, or what
Well,
else?
well, how are you using
Uh,
the words the spirit there? Like, what does that mean
uh,
in this
spirit,
context?
spirit in the general sense, of uh, something that is aware of itself, or something that is understanding something else, because matter doesn't understand. It's there. It's just there. And I can say mind because I can presuppose that God has a mind, a personal mind, like human beings, But it's I would presuppose that the cosmos has spirit, It's aware of itself, of the coherence it is, Because this coherence is wholeness, and I would the idea is that the ultimate meaning has to be aware of itself.
Well, yeah,
Otherwise, it wouldn't be ultimate. That's the kind of spirit, because you were asking about spirit.
sure. Well,
That's the idea.
could you unpack that a little
Hmm.
bit more too? Because you mentioned that earlier, and I'm interested. And it sounds like this is part of your kind of contribution to this
Yes,
anthology
yes,
that's getting in here. Just to make that clarification again.
yes.
But what's the basis for suggesting this kind of cosmic self-awareness? Like how is that explained or argued for, or what's the
Um,
yeah?
okay, that's kind of an intuition, of a basic intuition, because I would say um, if in a cosmos, uh, beings emerge who are able to make sense, or trying to make sense of the whole. Um, in my view, this wouldn't be possible in a cosmos which or that were not aware of this meaning by itself. The ultimate coherence. That's a presupposition. The ultimate coherence is an intuition. Has to be cannot be blind. Or dead, or like matter. It cannot be a void of meaning, of the awareness of meaning. For me,
So
this
that's
would be yes.
yeah. So that's not something that is arguable through evidence or rational argumentation, but it's just sort of a presupposition that you're working with. I mean,
Yes.
because
Yes, it's an
that's a
intuition.
big lift, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yes.
sort of like now assume that the entire cosmos is self-aware and this is the meaning of
Hmm.
everything. It's sort of like, well, that's kind of,
You know,
yeah.
the idea is that everything, the cosmos as a whole, is absolutely it's not complete, because or a totality, because the beings inside the cosmos are participating in it and doing things that cannot be pre-planned, preordained. But the idea is of this book, and that's a metaphysical choice I make. I say that the order of things is absolutely round, if you want a metaphor, round and sound, sound, the English word sound, making sense in
Mm,
itself,
mm.
and the ultimate sense. Everything, every part of sense, or every bit of sense, which is possible, including for example, human beings having worldview or anything, is part of this coherence and of this, and so it would be natural to think that this wholeness and roundness and soundness would be aware of itself.
Okay.
That's
Well,
that's a basic
yeah.
idea.
So, what are some other metaphysical choices that other contributors to this volume
Okay.
espouse?
Um, well, we can begin with John Heron, because John Heron, and Jorge Ferrer, who have contributed, are both parts of the transpersonal psychology. This movement which began with Abraham Maslow, in the late 60s, I think.
Hmm.
But he died shortly after, and then Stanislav Grof and other people, also Ken Wilber, took this endeavor forward, and this. at the origin is humanistic psychology of Carl Rogers and Maslow, and it's the pyramid of needs and so on. And then Maslow had this insight that you could not explain uh, the um, the needs of a being absolutely, immanently, because the being is incorporated or is embedded in a
Hmm.
cosmic wholeness, and therefore you have to go out of the of the person of the body mind, strictly speaking, and that's the transpersonal step. He met, but he died shortly after, and but he left this idea to his pupils, or I don't know how you say that in English. For example, Stanislav Grof, and its importance in this transpersonal psychology. In fact, it's in a philosophy too, and a view of the human being, is the idea of uh, uh, individuation and participation, which are complementary too. You have the idea that you are participating in the cosmos, but the more you mature and become yourself as a person, the riper also is your participation with the cosmos. That's a basic idea, and that's also the one many idea. In another version, and uh, I
Well,
think that
quick
yes.
question. So I'm curious about again this framing of the one and the many,
Hmm.
because on the one hand, I'm curious if this reflects some kind of sort of deep metaphysical tension that's needing some resolution, and this is a contribution to that kind of effort,
Hmm.
or if it's more of just sort of a loose heuristic to try to invite some kind of broad metaphysical speculation relative to manyness and unity. Like those are other different efforts, and so I'd be curious for you to say a little bit more again about like what you think the contributions in this volume are trying to kind of achieve,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yes. Also, so we have with transpersonal authors like John Heron and Jorge Ferrer, we have this duality of individuation and participation. There's pretty much the ideas of Carl Gustav Jung, who was always working his whole life on this, on saying that a person has to become mature to work on himself, and in the process also dealing with his place, in the cosmos, in the world, and relation to God. So this is very Jungian, this approach, and in fact, John Heron was the one who invented the notion of the one many back in, I think, 1992 or something, in his book Person and Feeling and Personhood.
And what is
Uh,
that? What is that concept? The one many.
One man is pretty much the same thing that than the many one. Is the it's also pretty much uh, you know um, a delimitation vis-a-vis reductionist spiritual philosophies, notably also Ken Wilber. Because with Ken Wilber, you at the highest level, you have the the ultimate reality, which he calls emptiness or non-duality. It depends, and there's a kind of of melting or of the egos, of the individual personhoods inside this wholeness, And Jorge Ferrer and also John Heron were very keen to oppose this, and they said even in the when you make the strongest spiritual experiences, the drop that you are in the divine sea
Mm,
will miraculously be preserved.
mm.
in its individuality. That too, this is the metaphysical choice, the anti-reductionism.
Hmm.
We want this relationship between persons and the divine. We want it to be a complementarity, a non-reductionism. That's a basic choice, and there are different articulations of this. Um, Jorge Ferrer, he um, it's a whole different approach for Jorge Ferrer. There's also the one which he calls, I think he calls it life or creativity, or the cosmos, but he refuses to let this totality be defined, or really, he says it's so multiple in its in actions by finite beings that you can't say anything more about it. It's like the scene on which you or I enact our religion, our spirituality, our worldview. And this is another approach, because for Ferrer too, neither the one nor the many is reducible to the other.
Do,
You know?
yeah, question. So I'm curious what you would make of the idea, or it's a question. I mean, are these metaphysical choices sort of aesthetic, or are they somehow philosophically? Because like here's the basic
Yes.
kind of issue, right? Is that someone could say, both many and one. Well, that doesn't make sense. That's a paradox, right?
Yes.
Or something like that, right? Whereas, like say some careful analytic philosophy is going to try to be very scrupulous about not falling into contradictions and this sort of a thing.
Mm.
But it seems like this is prone to um, contradiction seemingly at many levels, but then an attempt to
Okay.
kind of so the question is sort of yeah, how would you situate these various attempts? Is it something like trying to make the most sense of something rather confusing, or is it something more like we have a lot of options when we're dealing in metaphysical and mystical theology spaces, and maybe there's a kind of aesthetic component to just kind of saying this one fits me the best. I like this one the best. It feels the most right.
Okay.
Question something like that.
Yes. Well, I think in this mindset or in this philosophy, aesthetics and logic and intellect and feeling won't be separate either,
Hmm.
because they belong together. The problem of the contradictions or contrariness is a problem of the human mind. Because we want to ask, is it? It's either one or it's many, isn't it? And I would say actually not, because I studied logic too, and in logic you only get a contradiction if you have two parts of the world which are neatly divided, and then you say it's on the one side and it's also on the other side, and that's a
Yeah.
contradiction. But with these basic notions or fundamental and ultimate notions, this is not the case. Also, the dichotomies, like that's why it's called both one and many. The dichotomies are always complementing. It's not like in Nagarjuna, who says it's neither the one nor the other. Ultimately, it's only we can't understand it, and therefore sit down and meditate. Shut up and meditate.
Well,
And here
yeah.
and
Well,
here's it's that's not at all the case. You would say, okay, you have attention, you have a polarity, and there's a tension here. Okay, but ultimately, all the deep thinking is when you try to get you to understand the interplay between the poles, and also they never stay the same, because when you as a person develop as a philosopher, as a worldview person, you will find, okay, there's a tension I cannot solve. So this will help you maybe one day to the next step and reframing the whole thing.
mhm.
But the polarity will always come back in another guise, in a
Yeah.
different guise. That's the
No,
idea. And if because he was saying aesthetic, of course, the ultimate reality is also ultimate beauty, is also ultimate goodness, is also ultimate truth, because no ultimate concept or notion can be outside of this wholeness. That's a presupposition, you can also always argue that there is no ultimate wholeness, and say, well, for example, a madness or the evil is outside of it. But in this one many thinking or many one thinking, this is not possible. Also evil, also madness, also the suffering, the agony. Everything has to have its place and part in the whole picture. There's nothing outside. It's open in the sense that the participants in this cosmic play, withdraw to an extent to the wholeness. They have a certain degrees of freedom, of autonomy, and that's their withdrawal. Therefore, it's not a rigid totality or a full-blown totality or a once for all totality. It's also evolving. But at the beginning and the end of this evolution, there's always also the divine coming back. That's inbuilt. This is not paradox. It's not paradox. It's a frame like in logic that we have also always the problems also. If you want to prove the consistency and the completeness of a system, you have to go outside the system. But that doesn't mean that the system is paradox, only that you have to recede one step. And then the game begins once again, because if you want to prove this new system consistent and complete, you will have to recede yet another level.
Right.
That's not a contradiction, but it's a sign of this. How you I think you would put it this way: the iteration, the re-entry, if you wish. That's the re-entry point. I think this is very sensible, and this makes that this makes for the subtlety, souplesse. Come on, how do you say in English?
Subtlety. Yeah.
Subtlety and
Or do you mean
flexibility?
suppleness? Oh,
yes,
yeah, suppleness. Yeah.
Flexibility. The flexibility and the openness of it. It's not a rigid system, as we know it from scholastic theology or something.
Well, if I can
Yes.
try to get my bearings better a little bit, I'm kind of interested in the object of analysis here, if that makes sense, right? When you're talking, are you referring to God, or are you referring to the cosmos? Are these the same thing? Because
It's difficult. It's difficult.
well,
Because
like
yes,
a
yes.
cosmologist could talk about the cosmos, but they're going to try to stick very closely
Okay.
to a particular way. And you would probably say that, well, but cosmologists use a materialistic framework to talk about the
Mhm.
cosmos.
Yes.
So we're
That's
talking about
that's that's wrong. Yes, you
yeah,
don't have to do that, because cosmology is a technical term, designating the study of the outer space, the universe.
yeah,
But I'm talking more about cosmos in the Aristotelian sense.
yeah,
Cosmos comes in Greek. This means beauty. Like
yeah. Or
cosmetics,
ordered
beauty.
whole. Yeah, right.
Oh, that's all. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
As for your last question, it's beautiful in itself because it's whole, because it makes sense as an order,
yeah.
in itself, not just for humans. And that's the idea of the cosmos. Like in Latin, it's mundus, and mundus means something which is ordered. Which is
Hmm.
orders, which has its order. And the universe, you have to distinguish. When I talk about cosmos, I'm not talking about the outer space containing all the celestial bodies. That's a big question. Why
Yeah.
is there this void? This
Hmm.
void, and there are little tiny balls in it. They're so tiny, they're almost infinitely tiny
Hmm.
compared to these huge immensities. But that's another question. But I can I can show you that cosmos is, it's the framework behind all that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Because
this
most
is
most what is happening, what's going on in the cosmos, I think is happening on the planets, on the surfaces of planets, because the movement of interstellar dust and so on is relatively primitive as compared to people's brains, or the
right.
complexity of a biosphere. So you have to you can think of a void, of a black void containing, that's not the cosmos, that's part of it, and we don't understand what it is.
Yeah.
I certainly not. I would have to try and write another book about it.
Well, no,
Um,
that's helpful. I'm just trying to get a sense of so when I open this up and I look in the on the copyright page here, usually there's the what do they call that? The the Library of Congress sort of
yes.
designation, right? So this is oh, here we go. Philosophical theology, panentheism, materialism, relativism. Well, that's I mean, I guess philosophical theology is probably the broadest
Mhm.
characterization. But this
But
is a work of metaphysics, right? This is an
yes,
anthology of metaphysical considerations of these
yes,
kind
yes.
of yeah.
But
And
Brenton, one second. I forgot to
sure.
one thing, the main
Yeah.
thing. Um, because now I'm writing the next book. I was thinking of the title Both Many and One, so the other way around.
Okay.
But I was also I was also thinking of the divine cosmos.
Uh-huh.
And then you're thinking, should I call it the divine cosmos or the cosmic divine? Um, because from the content it doesn't matter because it's the same thing. But if you say the cosmic divine, the those who have already a religion will think the divine is more important or a prime
Hmm.
to the cosmos. But that's not the way I think. I would think that the cosmos is prime. There's a cosmos, this many one thing, yeah, this entity, this all-encompassing entity, and this cosmos um, has under among other traits, it has also divine spirit, which are certain attributes we can talk about or discuss about. I would say love. I would say all presence. I would say I don't know, something like all potential, everything that can be has to be included in this whole potential. Otherwise, you would have a beyond, and this would break the idea, But yes, I would prefer the divine cosmos, And once again, it's hard to. I think it's hard to get used to it for someone who is and comes from a Christian background. I myself come from a Catholic background,
Hmm.
but I have not received any, any formative philosophical influences from it. The
Yeah.
Trinity for me, this is absolutely superfluous, and most ideas of Paul, I think, have not much to do with the teaching of Jesus and what John the evangelist has to thinks he smuggles it into the so I'm very much at odds with the
But
theology.
everything that you're saying
Yes.
that doesn't that it lands to me rather differently because you're talking about this wholeness that is everything and it's also one and it's also love and it's also beauty and like that sounds like kind of classic traditional Christian theology to me, at least in its
Um,
medieval forms. No?
no, but in the classical theism, God is before the world.
Right.
Yeah, yes, absolutely beyond. And so the the initial God has to be a entity, an incomprehensible entity with the full power of means, the full freedom from constraints. So something like rather nothing, nothing with full power, and that's almost the contrary of
Well,
of the cosmos in as I see it,
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
this God, this nothingness, this all almighty nothingness, one day decides, well, why don't I make a cosmos, And that's the contrary. That's
Well,
from what I'm saying.
I feel like some people could say that's another story, maybe just as good, right? Like because if
Yes, it is.
because here's here's kind of the thing that I'm grappling with that probably you can tell is like I was really delighted to discover evolutionary spirituality that could then dovetail with evolutionary science and cosmic evolution and complexity theory. I get a lot of value out of being able to connect what we empirically can study and also logically relate to in terms of causal relationships and that sort of thing, and the sort of big story of meaning and wholeness and all that. So that's why I always get it's a little bit, you know, it feels a little amorphous maybe to me when it's kind of pure speculative metaphysics, because it's sort of like if we're able to sort of just presuppose things rather than maybe try to, demonstrate them or rational, what do you say, bring to bear evidence and rational kind of argumentation, this sort of a thing, then it's sort of like, well, it's sort of anyone's game, isn't it? So whether it's, a panentheistic cosmos or any other, it's sort of like, what are the boundaries that you could almost suggest, right? That are like, what are the limitations or the constraints on this scope of inquiry, if that question makes sense?
On my sort of inquiry, the
Uh,
boundaries.
yeah, well, no, on this kind of inquiry of sort of philosophical theology in the realm
Okay.
of both and yeah. So that's one question. I also am
Yes.
really curious, by the way, just to know
Wait,
what the book.
but
Oh, okay, I won't. All
yes,
right, go
but,
on.
but one question after
One
the
at a
other.
time. All right, yeah.
Otherwise, I'm 61. Otherwise, I forget the first
Sure, sure,
one.
sure. Yeah.
You know, the boundaries. The frame. There's always, I would always put this in a post-war middle-class civilization frame. Late modernism or fully fledged modernism. Um, with at the end we have this ecological bottleneck, and that's the frame that's the concrete frame, the historical frame. You have the metaphysical idea, which is at first glance is floating in the ideal or intellectual space, and for me, it's important to give this a historical anchor, a civilizational anchor, and a topical anchor, and this is our Western civilization, and you and I are belonging to a minuscule minority that thinks they have a advancement or a progress to offer, from modernist materialist thinking and postmodernist relativistic thinking.
Mhm.
That's what unites us, certainly, and that's the boundary, and or the frame, what is it? Has this anything to do with your question?
No, not so much. I was more interested in what the constraints are. So I'll put it this way: in
Yes.
different disciplines, right? Like, let's say you're a scientist and you have a theory. Well, the constraints on your theory are the evidence. So if you look for
Okay.
evidence and it doesn't match
Okay.
the theory, then you're like, okay, well, you have to throw the theory out. If you just keep working
Yes.
with the theory absent the evidence, it's sort of like that.
Okay.
That's not how that
Got
works.
it. Got it. I can answer it. I
Okay,
got it
yeah,
now. I
okay.
think I think the boundaries is uh, other other theories, other philosophies and worldviews of the past and the present um, that are one-sided, that leave out certain features or
Mm,
certain domains
mhm,
of our world as we know it as late modern
mhm,
persons. We know about almost much more things than previous epochs.
mhm,
And I think, or I claim that nowadays we can just keep on with time-honored Christianism,
mhm,
because this was a worldview created in late antiquity, and then refined through the Dark Ages and scholasticism, and then but there are there are features or sides to our modern world, postmodern world. The atrocities, the fullness, the stupidities and the foolishnesses of our existence on this planet. That these ancient worldviews can't explain, can't make sense of. And that's pretty much, like John Vervaeke. He says, well, it doesn't have to be religion like it used to be because we are not living in such an age anymore. So and that's a very really the boundary. If I'm claiming that the many one philosophy or many one theology, if you want, or metaphysics, has contains or includes um, all the other approaches without making their the leeways, their one-sidednesses, then that's the proof that this not is the ultimate approach, but it's a step forward.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it has to make sense of Heidegger. It has to make sense of Christianity. It has to make sense of devil worship. Whatever you wish of science fiction movies and of materialism and
It's
whatever
got to include the many. It sounds like, it's
the many not only of the entities but also the many of the products of our worldview production,
yeah.
of the history of philosophy and worldview. That's a boundary.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's helpful. Well, and a real quick question, or maybe a longer question, I'm not sure, but you mentioned that the sequel that you're writing, or the next book that you're writing, could have the title Both Many and One. And I'm just curious, like, what that book would look like. Like, what's the distinction there? Yeah.
Um, yes. I'm already writing on it, and I have two big things I think I can work on and maybe make some progress for everybody here also in our little scenes, meta-modern scenes or postmodern scenes. And the first is to to explain, just explain the whole, as you yourself do in your metamodernism book, a little bit or two, to explain how the field of tension, the field of philosophical and worldview tension, how it's built, coming from from maybe the French Revolution, and American Revolution through the industrial and scientific revolution of the 19th century, the um, the emergence of the bourgeois nations, if you like, the Western nations or the bourgeois nations, and then more importantly, the post World War II middle class civilization. I would like to explain to people because you can't. It's most often you can throw the people this bone. The both many one and many philosophies, but they won't understand the context. The historical context, the context in which this worldview has formed. There's a background, and the most important um, the most important uh, orientation points are the defeat of the totalitarian regimes, notably Hitler Germany, and then it's the reign of American materialism, scientism, consumerism, and then you have postmodernism, and I would like to expand, and then you have this postmodernism, this new phenomenon, beginning. Maybe there are precursors, Gebser and even Lessing back in 1780 or 90, and also Whitehead and others. But with the event of the 60s revolution, it becomes it gets a whole other dimension, of spirituality, of the influence of Eastern religions, and also systems theory, a whole bunch of things which allow to transform scientism or modern thinking into another thing, to take it beyond scientism and materialism and mere consumerism, um, that's one project I would like to make people understand some broad sketches how
Mhm.
this has worked, because it began the fully fledged system began after World War II. You know, the American system. But now, just now, and then there's the 1960s. The 1960s is really a turning point for the postmodernism doesn't take over, but it becomes a really a huge, a major milieu also. Milieus inside the middle class societies with quite different views, but in reality, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, modern civilization also continues to grow and become more totalitarian almost, and now we have the ecological bottleneck, the catastrophe of this growth thinking and overuse thinking, and that's one big thing I'd like to sketch a little bit, and also which is important to write a big chapter about all the postmodern little scenes we have now since spiral dynamics and Wilber came along. That's the first big thing, and the second, just shortly, would be which is quite different. I would try to explain how we can get beyond the particle thinking of modern physics, of the physicism of the physics. It's called physicalism in English, I think. And I think there's a way to reframe this, the real evidence, evidence from physics, in a context which is no more particle thinking but holist thinking. So this there you come the whole the circle comes around, and I've got some education back in my day, in logic and also in mathematics, because I once studied agriculture, and in agriculture we mostly learned physics and mathematics and chemistry in the first semesters. So I got really some of the tools which most people from the spiritual world lack. That's the basic mathematics, because you have to explain to people what is a tensor in relativity, in general relativity, and what does it do, and you have to understand it. Otherwise, you can't criticize the physicalism, because physicalism has immunized, self-immunized with its mathematical armor. You can't get through it, because the physicist will always say, well, you don't even understand what we are talking about, the vectors and those other things, so you have to keep quiet. And that's a great project of mine, really to explain the basics of these theories and make people understand that this is not a kind of a sorcery they can't get into, but the basic ideas are very simple, and also the flaws may be detectable, and maybe it can be taken taken back. You had this discussion with somebody else recently about it. I think it was Matt Sigal, where you were asking if the unintuitive features of the physical theories can be made intuitive again. And I think they can. There are limits. You can't understand a spin of an electron. You can't understand it in terms of a rotating body. It's a different thing. But this physical theories have to reproduce the not microscopic, nor minuscule, the middle-sized world we know. Everything you have in your room has to be explained by the theories. It can't be like with Wittgenstein, you climb up the ladder and then you throw it away. That's nonsense in my view. So this is a great project, and I'm wondering if I should separate these two projects and make two books out of it, because it's very different, and and so that's the things I would like to to get into the new book, and then also getting more clear about the God view I am suggesting. In which way or to which extent is this a God, I'm talking about, or a divine? You have to distinguish it from theistic, Western images of God, the transcendent God, and also from the emptiness divine of Buddhism, and maybe also from the certainly from the Neoplatonistic Platonistic one. That's a different thing, I would say, but mainly, the Eastern Asian ideas. What comes the closest to the idea of the one many, I think, is Taoism. Taoism,
Mm.
the idea of the Tao, which brings forth, inside of itself the thousand beings or 10,000 beings, as I think this, and also the idea of yin and yang. So funnily, it's mostly there's these very ancient Chinese ideas are most are the closest related, I think, to this many one thinking. You know. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So
so
it's
no, one more
okay.
sentence. Excuse me,
Here
because
you go.
this is the end of the day. We did some hiking in the mountains, and so I'm a little exhausted. Um, okay, so that's very important to really delimitate, the different types of God views from one another, in my view. And I'm not saying that the theist God doesn't make sense. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense if you make certain holistic assumptions. That's the main point. And so I would like to contribute to make people see clearer what's the difference, between different approaches, so they can leave this space of confusion, and of blurriness. I would like to contribute to educate those people too, because we have a real crisis of education right now in the Western world, due to smartphone and other things. Okay.
So it
Sorry.
just takeaway sounds like this other project you're envisioning is sort of a sociological framing of these metaphysical systems and
Mhm.
contextualizing this metaphysical
Yes.
new approach that is
Yes.
yeah it's sort of yeah okay no that makes sense. Okay, well, as we kind of wrap this up, what would you like to see as the impact of this kind of work going forward? What sort of how does this move from the realm of esoteric and rather abstruse philosophical thinking to stuff that might change the world system that we inhabit in a kind of practical way?
You know, I've been in the integral and related spaces since maybe 2012 or something, and I realized that the impact of these worldviews is very limited. The almost nobody got into the media of the broader educated public of Western nations. I think Hansi Freinacht once got into the New York Times Journal or something, but the resonance was not very big. And I think that um, normally a big worldview would have a milieu that's supporting it. Postmodernism has, in Germany, for example, has a very broad, maybe 10 to 15% of the population who are not thinking in modernist ways, but in postmodernist ways, in important respects. And now we know with I don't know if you had heard of the a coalition of Greens and Social Democrats in Germany, which now has
Hmm.
gone. But there was the minister, in English you would say uh, the uh, Secretary of Economy, or the Minister of Economy, was a Green politician named Robert Habeck. And this person was very much, in my view, transcending the postmodernist thinking. He was already aware that, well, the liberals and the libertarians and the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats with whom I'm making a coalition are thinking differently, and they also have the right points, the important points, for the electorate, and the milieus they are representing. So this was a step forward, but with postmodern thinking, for example, metamodern, or many one thinking about integral or process philosophy. I don't see as yet a real milieu which is mature enough, from the standpoint of character and personality, and also which has the education required, because postmodernist thinking, we can be a postmodernist with very little education and intellectual level, but you can't be a metamodernist without a pretty much amount of education. If you're trying to get into the thinking of Brendan Dempsey and understand his book, you have to dive into Freinacht, what's Storm and Viveki and you have to be ready or prepared to deal with all these different thinkers and the different domains they are traveling in, they are working in. So this new paradigm demands quite a lot of education and of life experience also, I think, and acceptance, but also distancing from previous states of mind, and ways of life also. So we don't have as yet we haven't got a public or an audience for it. I think most people in our little scenes are productive or creating things themselves, and there's a smaller fraction which are only receiving it, and but I don't see. Maybe I think it's some thousand persons in the world. I don't
Mm.
know. It's not hundreds of thousands. It's not millions.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. So I think that humankind and the world may not be ripe yet for this kind of worldview. And what we are doing now, I think, is we have to cultivate the plurality of approaches inside of this new paradigm.
Hmm.
What we are doing, you and me, I don't think we are doing it for a huge audience.
Hmm.
Maybe we are, at the end it will be 200 or 300 people, but we are connecting. The way you connect also with Matt Siegel, you're connecting with John Viveki. John Viveki is connecting with Matt Siegel, and so on. And so you're building networks, and someday maybe when the ecological crisis and political problems of the late modern civilization will become even more urgent, people will realize they need to get beyond their worldviews
Hmm.
they know, and I hope at this point they will search for something more,
Hmm.
and maybe, just maybe, they will find we will be there, still to give them something,
Yeah.
and because the problem is too, excuse me, but there's one big problem with this Facebook approach or internet, is that's it's not like in the ancient days with professors who are there for 40 or 50 years in university and can slowly and meticulously and carefully develop the system, and then it gets an audience or a public. But we always have to produce something new,
Mm.
like to get the attention. It's a logic of entertainment,
Yeah.
infotainment, if you
Yeah.
wish. So you have to, as we say in Germany, you have to chase the next hawk through the village,
Mm,
and then the next one. But the older ones get forgotten,
sure.
the classics, the new classics. And I can see how we can get beyond this psychological logic, of always new things, Um, in the time, with, for example, um, pop music or rock music in the 60s and 70s, the big companies gave the bands the time to mature. They didn't say publish one record a year.
Mm,
This would have burned out the people.
yeah.
And now I don't see how we can develop a new canon, a new canon
Mm,
of podcasts, the best podcasts. I was making a Facebook group called the Liminal Library, but there's no interest in it, in working. But I can't do it alone. I have very little time. I have a family. I have two jobs, and I'm
yeah.
doing this in my leisure time. So I really don't. Oh, wait a second, please. Oops. Hier quasi ein Gesprächspartner. Wir bezahlen. Okay? Tschüss. So, well, that's the vagaries of modern life.
Mhm.
The landlady of the pension where we are in
Ah,
the
yeah.
in the ski resort.
Ah, nice.
She gave me the facture.
Well, why
So
don't you finish up
yes,
that last thought and then we
yes,
should
yes,
wrap
yes,
this
yes.
up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was I? Where
You were
was
just
it?
saying that you were working on the liminal canon
Yes.
library and yeah.
Okay. So I see this problem because you were talking about the resonance I'm hoping for, and I actually not sure if there's already the milieus or circles of people ripe for this to make this step, beyond
Yeah.
late modernity.
Well,
That's a big problem. I don't know.
in terms of that canon that's being built, I would say this is a great contribution, and I highly recommend that people check this out. Wonderful anthology with some great people in this space, including Oliver. Writing on a new set of ideas for this emerging worldview, as you're describing it, and contributing meaningfully to the metaphysical substrate of this approach. And so, yeah.
Well,
Definitely well, first of all, again, recommend it, but also thank you, Oliver, for the work that you put into editing that and bringing that together and putting that out in the world, and for the stuff that you're doing in the space generally. Very interesting stuff. And where can people follow up with you, or if they're interested in this stuff, that they could yeah.
um, well, mostly in your Facebook group.
Mhm.
I will from time and again make something, or um, I if you want to understand my approach, get go on the website of Whip and Stock of the publisher, and download the introduction. The opening remarks.
Mhm.
Give a survey.
Mhm. Mhm.
Of the basic ideas, and but I will for example, I'm planning to make some comments, in meta modern spirituality about your book, and comment on it, and then maybe one day we can talk about your book a little more, because once again, this is a book you published 1 or 2 years ago, and it's disappearing, very quickly from the minds or from the discussions, and you put so much work in it, and it's so important because it brings together so many different domains, and different approaches from persons also from Europe, and
Yeah, I
and
mean,
also
I would say it's nice because while I agree with you on the psychological logic that we see in social media spaces of sort of chasing that hawk. What the nice thing about books is that they do stick around, they can be used. So,
Yes.
even if they're not showing up in social media all the time, there's still, engagement going on. For example, the
Oh,
metamodernism book you're mentioning, that's actually now being part of the curriculum for a class at the university. Oh, UCL, University College London is that's part
oh,
of this
good.
curriculum and has
Hmm.
also been used in the curriculum for a couple of other things. So those are kinds of the uses that you're not going to see as much on social media, but I think are hopefully informing part of the communication of these ideas. And I think similarly, a work like this could very easily find its way onto the syllabus of a future class in the metaphysics of, I don't know, metamodern integrative philosophy or something like that. So there's that. Well, thanks for this. Appreciate this conversation. Appreciate your work, Oliver. And yeah, we'll be having more conversations in that
Yes.
space online and in other places as well. So much appreciate you coming on the podcast. Godspeed, my friend.
Keep on with the good work.